You're standing on a stone bridge at twilight. Below you, the river runs black and slow. Behind you, the sound of hammering echoes through the valley, steady, methodical, like a carpenter building furniture. But the smell in the air tells you this is not construction. It's something else entirely. You turn toward the sound, and that's when you see them. Hundreds of wooden stakes rising from the hillside like a forest that grew overnight, and on each one a figure hangs suspended between earth and sky, moving slightly in the wind. The hammering continues. More stakes, more bodies. You realize with cold clarity that this is not the work of a madman. This is the work of a system, a man who has turned cruelty into architecture. Before we step deeper into this nightmare, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching this from? It's incredible to me that we're all scattered across the globe, separated by oceans and centuries, yet here we are together, trying to understand what drives a human being to become this. His name was Vlad III, Prince of Wallachia. History would call him Vlad the Impaler. Literature would turn him into Count Dracula. But the truth is far stranger and more terrifying than any vampire legend. Because Vlad wasn't a monster born from supernatural evil. He was a product of something much more human: betrayal, captivity, and the cold mathematics of survival in a world that devoured the weak. To understand how a man becomes a legend of terror, you have to start in the place where his humanity was stripped away. And that place wasn't a castle or a battlefield. It was a gilded cage in the heart of the Ottoman Empire, where a frightened boy learned that mercy was a luxury only the powerful could afford. The year is 1442. Vlad is 11 years old when his father makes a choice that will echo through centuries. Vlad Dracula, the ruling prince of Wallachia, is caught between two grinding empires, the Ottoman Turks to the south and the Kingdom of Hungary to the north. To prove his loyalty to Sultan Murad II, he offers up the only currency that matters in this brutal game, his own sons. Vlad and his younger brother Radu are handed over to Ottoman guards on a dusty road at the edge of the empire. As they're led away on horseback toward Anatolia, the boys look back. Their father is already riding in the opposite direction. He doesn't wave. He doesn't hesitate. The message is clear. You are tools, not children. They arrive at the fortress of Egrigos, deep in Ottoman territory. But this isn't a dungeon of rats and darkness. It's something far more insidious. The Ottomans don't want dead hostages. They want obedient princes who will one day rule Wallachia in the Sultan's name. So the boys are educated, taught Turkish, Islamic law, philosophy, warfare. They're given fine clothes and access to the royal court. On the surface, it looks like privilege. But both boys understand the truth. This is a leash disguised as a necklace. And here's where the two brothers split into opposite souls. Radu, the younger one, adapts. He's beautiful, charming, eager to please. He converts to Islam, adopts Ottoman customs, and eventually becomes close to the Sultan's son, Mehmed. Rumors whisper that their bond is more than friendship. Radu looks at his captors and sees a new family. He finds comfort and surrender. But Vlad sees only wolves. He refuses to pray their prayers. He mocks the guards. He clings to his Wallachian identity with a stubbornness that borders on suicidal. And for this he is punished. The Ottomans use a method called the falaka, a wooden clamp that locks the victim's feet in place, while rods beat the soles until the bones crack. Vlad learns to walk on swollen purple flesh. He learns that defiance has a price, but that submission is a kind of death. Yet amid the beatings and isolation, something shifts inside him. He stops fighting. He starts watching. He studies the Janissaries, the Sultan's elite soldiers, kidnapped Christian boys raised to be fanatical warriors. He watches their discipline, their absolute lack of fear. He realizes the Ottoman Empire isn't held together by gold or faith. It's held together by terror and order. And most importantly, he watches how they handle rebellion. Impalement isn't Vlad's invention. It's an Ottoman punishment he likely witnesses first-hand rebels hoisted onto stakes, dying slowly over days while crowds fall silent. He studies the anatomy of fear. He learns that if a small nation wants to survive against a giant, it can't fight with honor. It has to fight with insanity. By the time he's released years later, the boy who entered that fortress is gone. In his place stands a young man with dead eyes and a very clear philosophy. Kill them before they kill you, and make sure the manner of their death terrifies anyone who might come after. Vlad returns to Wallachia in 1448, expecting to reclaim his father's throne. Instead, he finds a crime scene. His father has been assassinated not by foreign invaders, but by Wallachian nobles, the boyars, who rule the country like a mafia, and his older brother, Mircea, the one who stayed behind while Vlad was in captivity. The boyars captured him, tortured him, and buried him alive. Imagine that death. The weight of soil pressing down on your chest. The darkness as you claw at the wood above you, screaming for mercy that never comes. Vlad sits alone in a chapel and makes a vow, not to God, to the memory of his brother, blood for blood, but more than that, suffering for treason. For years he bides his time. He's overthrown briefly, forced into exile, wandering the wilderness of Moldavia like a ghost. But he's not aimless. He's making lists, names, families, estates. The men who killed his father, the men who buried his brother. When he finally seizes power for the second time in 1456, the boyars welcome him with false smiles. They see a 25-year-old puppet, a former hostage, who won't last the winter. They believe he's weak because he's quiet. They're catastrophically wrong. It's Easter Sunday, 1457. The great hall in Targovik is filled with 500 of Wallachia's most powerful nobles and their families. They're dressed in silk and fur, laughing, feasting, toasting the new prince. The air smells of roasted lamb and spiced wine. Vlad sits at the head of the table, silent, watching. When the feast reaches its height, he raises his hand. The music stops. The hall goes quiet. He asks a simple question. How many princes have you survived? The boyars, drunk and arrogant, begin to shout out numbers. 7, 12, 30. They think it's a game. They think they're bragging, but Vlad hears it differently. Every prince they survived was a prince they betrayed. He gives a signal. The doors slam shut. Guards step from the shadows with drawn swords. The older boyars, too frail to be useful, are impaled immediately in the courtyard. Their screams mix with the Easter bells. But the younger, stronger nobles? Vlad has a different plan. Still wearing their Easter finery silk tunics, velvet cloaks, jeweled rings, they're shackled and marched 50 miles to a remote mountain ruin. This will become Ponari Castle, Vlad's fortress. The boyars become slave labor. They haul stones up steep cliffs, hand over hand, day and night. No food, no rest. Months pass. Their fine clothes rot off their bodies. Their soft hands are stripped to bone. When they collapse, they're thrown into the ravine and replaced. By the time the castle is finished, the old aristocracy of Wallachia has ceased to exist. With the nobles crushed, Vlad turns his gaze downward to the streets. He wants a perfect society, and perfection requires pruning. He announces a grand banquet in Targovikid, inviting the poor, the sick, the elderly, the beggars. Hundreds gather in a large wooden hall, grateful for the prince's sudden generosity. They eat, they drink. As the feast ends, Vlad appears and asks, "Do you want to be without care, lacking nothing?" The crowd, thinking he's offering charity, shouts yes. Vlad nods, steps outside, and orders the hall sealed. Then his men set it on fire. As the screams rise with the smoke, Vlad tells his captains he's done this for 2 reasons: so they would no longer suffer, and so the nation would contain no burden. In one night he solves poverty by incinerating the poor. Crime vanishes, not because people are good, but because they're paralyzed with fear. Vlad places a golden cup, encrusted with gems, on the rim of the public fountain in the town square. Anyone can use it. But the rule is simple. The cup must never leave the fountain. In any other city in Europe, it would vanish in minutes. But in Targovik, it sits there for years, unguarded, glittering in the moonlight, worth more than a peasant could earn in a lifetime. No one touches it. The invisible hand of terror is stronger than any chain. But this silence is about to be shattered. By 1461, the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II, the same man who conquered Constantinople, has had enough. Vlad has stopped paying tribute. He's stopped sending boys to be trained as janissaries. This is open rebellion. Mehmed sends 2 high-ranking envoys to collect the debt. When they arrive at Vlad's court, they bow but do not remove their turbans. In Ottoman culture, the turban stays on, but Vlad feigns offense. He asks why they insult him by covering their heads. The envoys reply that it's not their custom to remove the turban for anyone, not even the Sultan. Vlad smiles. "Then I will help you strengthen your custom," he says, "so you may never break it again." He signals his guards. The envoys are seized. Small iron nails are brought forward. While the diplomats scream, the guards hammer the nails through the fabric of the turbans and into their skulls. Vlad doesn't kill them immediately. He lets them suffer, then sends them back to Constantinople with a message: "I am not your slave." When the envoys stumble into Mehmed's court, the Sultan goes white with rage. This is more than execution. It's desecration. The diplomatic channels close. Mehmed assembles an army of over 60,000 men, 3 times the force that took Constantinople. He's not coming to conquer Wallachia. He's coming to erase Vlad from history. Spring 1462. The Ottoman war machine crosses the Danube. Against 60,000 soldiers, Vlad has fewer than 30,000, mostly peasants. In a conventional battle, he'd be crushed by noon. But Vlad has no intention of fighting conventionally. As the Ottomans march north, they find nothing but ash. Vlad orders his own people to burn their crops, slaughter their livestock, and retreat into the mountains. The Ottomans march into a man-made desert. There's no food, no water. When they rush to village wells, they find them poisoned with animal carcasses. Thirst kills more men than arrows. But Vlad doesn't stop there. He recruits the sick men and women suffering from plague, leprosy, tuberculosis. He dresses them in Ottoman clothing and sends them to infiltrate the enemy camps at night. These walking biological weapons spread infection deep behind enemy lines. Panic spreads faster than disease. Ottoman soldiers stop trusting each other. Every cough is a death sentence. Every shadow hides a threat. And then comes the night of June 17th. Vlad leads a few thousand elite cavalrymen on the most audacious raid in medieval history. They discard their armor for speed. They wear turbans and tunics taken from dead Ottoman prisoners. Vlad rides at the front, speaking perfect Turkish, the language forced on him as a child, now his deadliest weapon. They drift past Ottoman sentries like ghosts. When challenged, Vlad barks orders in flawless Turkish, reprimanding guards for their lack of discipline. Terrified of offending a high-ranking officer, the guards let them pass. They ride deep into the heart of the camp, then light torches and blow bugles from every direction, creating the illusion of an army 10 times their size. They slash tent ropes, trapping soldiers inside, stabbing them through the canvas. Vlad has one target, the Sultan himself. He drives his horse toward the largest, most opulent tent in the center. But in the chaos, his intelligence fails by mere meters. He slaughters the Grand Viziers, but Mehmed is just out of reach, surrounded by janissaries. Realizing the moment is lost, Vlad signals retreat, but the damage is done. In the confusion, Ottoman soldiers turn their blades on each other, unable to distinguish friend from foe in the flickering torchlight. For hours the Ottomans massacre their own ranks. By dawn, thousands lie dead. Mehmed survives, but his confidence is shattered. He orders the army to march on Targoviket. He expects a fortified city. Instead, he finds the gates wide open. No soldiers. No resistance. Just a road leading into the forest. And that's when he sees it. Stretching for 3 kilometers, 20,000 stakes pierce the sky. On every point a body slides slowly toward the earth. High above the mass of rotting peasantry, one stake towers over the rest. It holds the corpse of Hamza Pasha, the Sultan's general. He's still wearing his crimson silk robes and velvet turban, the fabric flapping mockingly against his liquefied skin. The message is brutal in its irony. Vlad respects rank enough to give him the highest stake, but hates him enough to let him rot in his finest clothes. Mehmed, sickened, turns his horse around. He cannot fight a man who does this. The Ottomans retreat. But the war isn't over. Vlad rides north to meet his ally, King Matthias Corvinus of Hungary. The Pope has given Matthias a fortune in gold to lead a crusade against the Turks. Vlad expects reinforcements. Instead, he finds chains. Matthias, who spent the crusade money on personal luxuries, needs a scapegoat. He arrests Vlad on fabricated treason charges and launches the world's first propaganda campaign using the newly invented printing press. German pamphlets flood Europe, filled with gruesome woodcuts and sensational stories. They claim Vlad dips his bread in blood, roasts children, forces mothers to eat them. While Vlad was brutal, these tales are designed to strip him of humanity, painting him as a raving lunatic rather than a calculating strategist. For 12 years, Vlad rots in a Hungarian tower, while his brother Radu takes the Wallachian throne and turns the country into a quiet Ottoman vassal state. The warrior is locked away. The legend of the monster is printed, distributed, and sold for pennies. By 1475, the Ottomans threaten Hungary again. Matthias realizes he needs Vlad. The chains are unlocked. Vlad is given a new army and pointed south. He retakes the throne in November 1476, but the world has changed. His allies are dead. His enemies are everywhere. His third reign lasts barely 2 months. In December 1476, while marching near Bucharest, Vlad disappears into the fog of war. Some say he was killed by a stray Ottoman lance. Others claim his own soldiers, tired of endless bloodshed, assassinated him. The most tragic version suggests a case of mistaken identity, that in the thick of battle, his men didn't recognize him and struck him down, thinking he was a Turkish commander. His head was severed, preserved in honey, and sent to Constantinople. Mehmed, the man who once turned his horse around in terror, finally had his trophy. He displayed Vlad's head on a stake above the city gates. The Impaler was finally impaled. That should have been the end. But 400 years later, in a London library, an Irish theater manager named Bram Stoker stumbled upon a footnote about a Wallachian prince named Dracula, son of the dragon. Stoker knew almost nothing about the real history. He just liked the sound of the name. He combined it with the gruesome details from those German propaganda pamphlets, and in 1897, the literary Dracula was born. The military strategist who fought to save Christian Europe was transformed into an aristocratic vampire who feared crucifixes. Today, if you visit Romania, you'll find a strange duality. In the West, Dracula is a Halloween costume. But in Romania, Vlad is still revered by many as a hero, a harsh but just ruler who stood tall when everyone else knelt. The true horror of Vlad the Impaler isn't that he drank blood. He didn't. The horror is in the reality of what he did do. He showed us that the line between hero and monster is often just a matter of perspective. He proved that sometimes to defeat a nightmare, you have to become one. And perhaps that's why we're still talking about him 6 centuries later. We tell ghost stories to scare ourselves with fantasy. But deep down, we know the scariest things in the dark are not vampires. They're men with absolute power and the will to use it. The golden cup still sits in our imagination, glittering and untouched. A reminder that perfect order and absolute terror are sometimes indistinguishable. Vlad understood that, and in understanding it, he became something that could never die, not a man, not a vampire, but a question we're still afraid to answer. What would you become to save everything you love?